Pastor Miles Valley is here today, and you pastor Rouge Church in Scarborough.
Yes.
You know how to reach people, but your testimony is like incredible. 16 years of age, you are found frozen to death in a snowbank.
Yes.
Tell us.
Well, I was at a party, and a lot of people were there. I was 16 years old, 130 pounds, and we had bets. And they were betting everybody to who could drink 40 ounces of whiskey for $1,000. And I had such emptiness in me, I didn't really care what happened at that time in my life. And I had one friend, he went and picked it up, drank it. Mickey was like my size, couldn't do it. So I went and picked it up. It was 40 ounces, went like this in 10 seconds. Bam. When you have that much alcohol in you, you could get poison, alcohol poison. And all of a sudden, they told me about 5-10 minutes later, I had a t-shirt on, and it was 20 below. It was cold like this, and 40 mile an hour winds in Kirkland Lake, Ontario. And I went outside, and I was walking around. They told me I fell asleep in a snowbank. And so I froze in a snowbank. And so somebody phoned the ambulance and got me and brought me into the hospital, and I was frozen. And it just, I don't know if anybody wants to see.
Well, we believe you, I see it.
Okay, patient was found frozen in a snowbank on the medical reports. And they gave me last rites and all that stuff.
You weren't a Christian at the time.
I wasn't a Christian. And
we might remind our audience that ethanol alcohol, a chemist calls C2860, and they remind us it is a drug. In our society today, we kind of think of alcohol, well, it's a drug just like any other drug. You consumed a lot of it. How did you survive?
Well, this is what's weird. This is my whole testimony. When I came on here, when I thought about my testimony is in two things. Christ knew me, and Christ is in control. Well, when he knew me when I was back in that state of my sin. I don't understand how, but he knew me. And he knew me in such a way that he used the alcohol, allowed it to preserve me so that when I was frozen, I was able to be kept alive. This is what the doctor told me. So when I went into the thing, I was kept alive, but I was frozen on the outside. So I was able to, be sustained.
Sure.
When I came back, he told me all this. And I said, really? And he says, I want to tell you something. After he told me, I want you to come and see me after he revived. He says, I want you to know something. I'm a born-again Christian. And I've never seen anything like this. He said, you were dead. And he said, all of a sudden, you were revived. He said, God did this for you. And here I am, 16, buzzed out of my head, looking at this guy. God did it for me. What? And he says, God has a purpose for your life. I don't know what it is.
And this is a medical doctor.
Yeah, and I was 16 years old.
God bless him.
And I said, what? And he sowed a seed. He sowed that seed in my heart. And I left that thing, nothing changed. I just went crazy, more crazy, more crazy, more crazy, until 25 years old. And he kept me. Christ knew me, and he kept me through all of this stuff. I don't have time to tell you how he kept me.
And our good friend Ravi Zacharias' brother-in-law, pastoring in Ontario, you go into his church, think it's boring. God has different plans. How did you come to faith?
Well, I just, my wife, you got to remember, drug in my life, alcohol in my life, never changed. I was 22, met my wife, she was 18. We get married. 3 years later, I was 25, she's still young, hooked on drugs, really bad situation with me. She left me. When she left me, I went to the Rexdale Alliance Church because she used to take me. That's when I was bored.
Yeah.
But then I had a need. I wanted my wife back. I didn't want Jesus. I wanted my wife back. That's the truth. And when I went there and the pastor said, I can't guarantee your wife to come back, but I can give you Jesus. And I says, well, I'll take him. And I invited him into my heart at the 25 years old. And I left that thing, no big bang, phoned my wife. I said, listen, I received Jesus. Will you come back? Will you come back? And she says, 10 minutes. Oh, big pause, biggest pause. I says, come back. She says, okay, I'll come back. If you're conning me again, I'm leaving. I said, no, just come back. We'll do it God's way. As a matter of fact, brother, she told me, do you know who the first person you brought to Jesus was? I said, who? Me, when you said, we'll come back and do it God's way.
And the Lord built on that foundation of salvation and propelled you in ministry.
Yes.
You're in Scarborough. It's not an easy place. Jim Carrey's from Scarborough. Says he's used to sweep carpets there. This is a unique ministry you have, Rouge. Tell us how God's using you now.
Well, it's not a big thing, but what he's doing is with me, with my brokenness, in my brokenness, he's bringing men for the last 10 years, young men coming to me and trying to help them through their stuff as a father. And I've become like their father, a lot of them, mentoring them like a lot. And they're changing into godly men. So we're at about 50, 80 people in our church. It's a solid church, self-supporting church. They do it all on their own, help me.
And we might mention that you're ordained with the Christian Missionary Alliance. A.B. Simpson was all about outreach, not in reach, and that resonated. You've got a newspaper clipping. Bring this up because I want you to point out that as in the ministry of D.L. Moody, there were two women in England who said, we're praying for you. Nobody ever knew who they were, praying for Moody to be filled with the Holy Spirit. And we don't record their names, but Moody's life does. And this lady, probably nobody knows nationally, but she played a singular part in your Christian experience. Tell us.
Yeah, I'm going to go real fast. I end it with this. Okay, Christ knows, Christ is in control. And how he is about 7 years ago, I was really down, depressed. I wanted to quit the ministry. I didn't want to stay any longer. I left to go up north. This is Kirkland Lake.
And tilt that a little forward, because David called me the other day and said, if we tilt it forward, we won't get a glare.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, and I went up to the Northern Ontario, and this little church, I kept asking God two questions. How big are you, God? And who prayed for me? Because like I told you, from the third, maybe second, third generation, I have no Christians in my home. And I always wondered who prayed for me. I believe people who pray for other people get saved.
That's right.
Okay. And I was always wondering who prayed for me, who prayed for me. And so my friend, he used to be a drug dealer and he got saved. This guy, I stayed at his house and we were drug dealers together. He got saved. When I stayed at his house, I went to this church to get some encouragement. And I kept asking those two questions. When I walked into this church, a guy came up to me, asked my name. They knew who I was. They went to the pastor and said, we should give his testimony. He was, you know what he's talking about? How big is God? I said, oh boy, he's going to talk to me, Lord. Didn't say anything to me, brought me up. I'm doing exactly what I'm doing today. I went and sat down. I thought, oh man, I wanted to know how big you were, God. I want, those questions answered. I sat down, and this lady here, Jean Timmons, right here, she was sitting in front of me, and as I was sat down, she turns around, looks me in the eye, she's got tears coming down, and she says to me, when you were 16 years old, I saw it in the paper that you froze in a snowbank, and I started to pray for you. I couldn't believe it. And she said, now I know what happened. God made you a preacher through my prayers. And we hugged, and this is her name, Jean Timmons, right here. And she's the founding member of this church, right here.
Of a former friend that was a
drug dealer.
The power of prayer. J. Vernon McGee said, more people are won to Christ through the avenue of prayer than any other means. And I can give testimony today that it took 17 years of praying for God to release my mother from alcoholism. 17 years. And I'm talking to some grandparents right now, and you have quit praying because you've given up. You've quit praying for God to restore that marriage of your son or daughter. You've quit praying for that addiction to be broken. And the testimony of Pastor Miles today, the real testimony, is the power of prayer. And secondly, Miles, let's remind the people of God today, the last conscious sensation before you freeze to death is sleepiness. And Jesus said that the church is typified by Laodicea. And Laodicea is not zestos, the Greek word for hot, and is not cold. She is lukewarm. And it's a church asleep. And your message to us today tells us we can't be asleep. We got to wake up. We got to get on our knees. We got to pursue God. And tell us just 60 seconds or less, the passion now. Your son's offset. He's in China, young entrepreneur, loves the Lord. I mean, God's radically changed it. What's the biggest passion now for your life from this point forward?
For me, I was thinking about it, and God, through Jesus, that He knew me and He's in control of me. I received Him in my heart. He has blessed my life. And He has blessed me with my kid who is in China now. And I didn't plan all that. He's doing that. I don't even know what's going to happen. I didn't do. And then my daughter who's doing a sign for the deaf, she has a passion for it. I didn't plan it. Together, and here I am learning how to read through a dictionary with my Bible. Does God have a sense of humor?
Miles, we're so proud of you. Thank you so much for being here today. And again, we want to just remind people there is hope. This is why Crossroads is distinctive. Boldly proclaiming the gospel.